this is my part 2 ranking of all the MCU and DCEU movies. Number 29, Iron Man 3. This is a real frustrating one because Shane Black's dialogue fits Tony Stark really well. There's some of the best action in the MCU. Tony's dynamic is great with these new characters in this movie, but the Mandarin twist is just very bad, and the plot lines in this movie are abandoned once you get to Age of Ultron. But if you can tolerate that, I think this is a fun MCU movie. Number 28, Ant-Man. This movie might be small in scale, but it's a lot of fun seeing the MCU heist movie. There's a charismatic cast with Paul Rudd in the lead. You have Michael Douglas and a bunch of other cast members that just bring a bunch of life to this film. But the plot is derivative from the first Iron Man, but that doesn't mean it's fun. It's not a lot of fun because it's just unassuming MCU fun. 27, Aquaman. This is a film that just embraces the inherent goofiness of Aquaman, and it assets from being a silly superhero film. There's some wonderfully shot action from James Wan where it's one take wide shots, you can see everything that's happening. There's a bit of a derivative plot, as this movie has some similarities to Black Panther, but there's some really compelling villains in the mix, and so this is very solid superhero entertainment. Number 26, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This, to me, is the best of the Ant-Man films because it's a more serious and more important to the MCU than the first two Ant-Man movies. It has more focus than all of Phase 4 has. Kang is a great villain. It's larger in scale than the both Ant-Man movies. There's some weird things with the way they treat Cassie and the execution of MODOK in live action, but other than that, I think this is a really good movie. Kicking off the top 25 is Black Widow. While this movie may feel like a weird kickoff to Phase 4, it is an enjoyable spy film overall. The stakes in this movie are more personal, connected to our characters. There's charismatic characters, in particular Red Guardian and Yelena. I had a lot of fun with those two. But there's a weird decision for the twist of the villain Taskmaster, and there's a very lackluster finale. But I still think this is a fun spy movie. Next one up here, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Sam Raimi's MCU horror film that has a bunch of weird effects, just like the first film. There's some fun multiverse cameos in the mix, even though they are a little bit wasted in this film. But to me, what holds this movie back is that it could have been so much better than it actually was, but there's just too many plot devices and not as much madness as you would expect. Still, it's a good watch. Number 23 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a proper sequel to the first film that still contains a bunch of the energy, humor from the first film. There's some interesting themes about fathers and sons, but the story is structured a bit weird, as there's a different villain in each act, which is very weird, and there's an incredibly stupid inciting incident, but this is one of the most rewatchable MCU movies to me. Number 22, Captain America the First Avenger, a great origin story for Steve Rogers with a noble lead in the center of it, where he's inspiring and wants to do the right thing from beginning to end. There's a great score and awesome production values, but what holds this one back is that there's an exposition-y villain, and it's not a great narrative as it montages through World War II, and it was so close to being a top-tier MCU film to me. Number 21, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, a fun film to add to the MCU mythology with a great villain in this franchise. It can be really funny. There's some awesome action sequences, and like I said, our villain, he's a villain that needs to be stopped, but you could see where he's coming from in his motivation. Now, there is an over-reliance on CGI here for especially the final battle, but it's just a really fun MCU movie. Kicking off the top 20, The Suicide Squad. This is where the list gets really competitive, and in this case, James Gunn is perfect for this material to adapt a Suicide Squad movie. It finds humanity in the weirdest of characters, even like Polka Dot Man. It has some funny and dark humor at the same time, and it has sentimental themes about finding friendship in the weirdest places. I consider this movie a prototype for what James Gunn perfected in Peacemaker, but I still think it's really good and really fun. Number 19, Shazam. Just a fun time at the movies and a good addition to the DCEU. There's obviously in the center of it a great performance from Zachary Levi, but it has a big heart because at its core, it's a movie about finding family. And that's just really emotional and sentimental in this movie. Also, it's one of the funniest DCEU films. Now, the villain does turn into a mustache-twirling villain in the final half, but still one of the more rewatchable DCEU movies. Number 18 is Black Panther. Of all the MCU movies, this one has the most rich themes in it, and it also has a great villain in Killmonger who has enough truth into what his point of view is, and is able to overcome the moral victory. And this movie has something to say, along with some great performances. Now, there is some bad CGI effects in here, and that's a pretty big problem that knocks this movie back, because it is a big budget blockbuster. Number 17, Black Adam. This movie feels like it was made 15 years ago, where superhero movies were more simplistic, but I think that's a good thing. It has every form of entertainment, much like Aquaman. It's very straightforward, but that's what makes it a lot of fun. There's some nice dynamics between characters, especially Black Adam and Hawkman. I had a lot of fun with their dynamic, and it's just a good time with the movies. It didn't really do anything to frustrate me, but it's not one of the best comic book movies ever, and so it's just an enjoyable film. And finally, here we have Birds of Prey. This is a very enjoyable Deadpool-esque film in the DC universe. It's small scale and street level, and it's just a breath of fresh air in this comic book genre. There's a bunch of practical stunt work, which makes the action even better. It's told from an unreliable narrator. That makes it interesting because it's non-linear. And there's a bunch of fun and lively characters thrown into the mix. And so, this is one that I thoroughly enjoy watching. Down below in the comment section, share your ranking of all the MCU and DCU movies, middle section. Click that like button, be sure to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. I'll see you in the next one.